Frankly, Mike, we don't care about your excuses. The fact of the matter is there have been a lot of dumb moves that this franchise has made over the last 30 years or so, and people don't forget those things easily. But you know what does help them forget? Winning. Super Bowls. And that is where Joe Burrow comes in. Welcome to the Jungle, Bengals fans. I'm Kyle Phelps and Mike Brown.
Alone.
So we're wrapping up our Legacy of Mike Brown series today, and in the finale, I am here to stand on the table for this guy. Not my actual table, of course, that thing sucks, I'd probably fall over. But he's made plenty of mistakes, to be clear, I get it. But the man got his head out of his ass years ago. Give him some credit, please. So if you haven't watched the rest of my series, I definitely recommend doing that now. As I said in the third episode, I used to hate on Mike Brown as much as anyone in the Bengals fan base. But the fact of the matter is, he's changed his stripes, and I think people ought to recognize that, man, seriously. Some of y'all are just some of the most ungrateful fans in the world, I swear. So in the last episode, we left off with the impact that Duke Tobin and the Blackburn family have really made over the last decade or so for the Cincinnati Bengals. Starting in the mid-2000s, you started seeing a shift in philosophy of Mike Brown and that era of the Bengals that led to more success than that I grew up thinking was even possible for this franchise. And you know why that is, guys? It's because Mike finally started getting out of his own way. I mean, that was a big change for him. I know he's never not been heavily involved in the decision-making or anything like that, but he used to be like this autocratic, terrible ruler who was like a my way or the highway type of tyrant. Marvin, Duke, and the Blackburns were massive in terms of helping him kind of shift this philosophy and actually allow him to open the room up to more voices. And to be fair, there was a bit of a regression after that 2015 season. The Bengals generally like to keep the inner workings of their organization really close to the chest, so I can't exactly confirm this, but I believe that this was around the time that the new generation really started taking firm control of the team. And we have some evidence of this, from things like their failure to extend Andrew Whitworth and the subsequent implosion of their offensive line that still resonates to this day. Now, that whole situation kind of stems from the Blackburns insisting on lowballing Whit to the point that he just couldn't justify being loyal to a team that clearly didn't value him anymore. He finished his career with the Rams and, well, we know what happened there. That said, the fact that they were even in the Super Bowl in the first place should show you just how much Mike Brown changed his philosophy. He let the Blackburns finally have some control, screw things up, quite frankly, and still gave them the opportunity to learn from their mistakes without having to be the guy who kind of rushes in and fixes everything, even though he probably wouldn't have actually fixed it. But now, to be fair, that's just good parenting for you, but that kind of turnaround for the organization would have never been possible with an owner who was just solely focusing on numbers and overall short-term management of the team. One of Mike's biggest criticisms over the years has been his cheapness and his unwillingness to spend money on the team. I'm not sure I always agree with that necessarily, although we can definitely talk about the players he actually was agreeing to spend money on. The fact of the matter is, the Bengals' philosophy used to be pay your own players first and don't really worry about anything else. Don't forget that Carson Palmer's whiny ass was once the highest paid player in NFL history at that point, guys. They gave Andy Dalton $115 million, for Christ's sake. You know, they've always really valued their really great quarterbacks. They've never been allergic to paying players that they actually personally value that highly, of course. However, in recent years, it's also been a willingness to spend money on outside free agents, which has typically been a very un-Bengals thing, right? Bengals fans for the longest time have been clamoring for Mike to please spend some money on outside talent. And for that matter, since 2020, they brought in big names like DJ Reader, Von Bell, Trey Waynes. We don't have to talk about Trey Waynes, but they did spend the money on him, though. That's what the key is. Trey Hendrickson, Chidobe Awuzie, Mike Hilton, Alex Kappa, Ted Karras, Lyle Collins. I know not all of the guys that I just mentioned are guys who really truly lived up to their contracts, but the point is Mike is willing to invest in a Super Bowl window, and that's something we were worried he wouldn't do in the first place. By the way, did you guys know that the Bengals have an analytics department? Like, I guess technically they don't. They have one guy, Sam Francis, who kind of runs their entire analytics process. By the way, if anybody in the Bengals front office ever watches this video and you're looking to expand your analytics departments, I'm just saying. But the point is, the Brown family saw something that a lot of other teams are already doing and figured maybe it's a good idea after all. They even invested in an indoor practice facility. Like, again, I'm not trying to argue that this was all Mike Brown by himself, by any means. But the fact that he signed off on this to begin with should show the point that I'm trying to make with this whole video series. At the end of the day, though, all we want as Bengals fans is results. For the longest time, Mike Brown and others in the Bengals organization tried to defend his actions with just a tirade of excuses. Frankly, Mike, we don't care about your excuses. The fact of the matter is there have been a lot of dumb moves that this franchise has made over the last 30 years or so, and people don't forget those things easily. But you know what does help them forget? Winning. Super Bowls. And that is where Joe Burrow comes in. Now, possibly the single best thing Mike could have ever done for his legacy is simply not screwing up the Joe Burrow pick in the 2020 season. Granted, the Bengals almost screwed up that one too by refusing to pay guys like Andrew Whitworth and Kevin Zeitler, allowing the offensive line to deteriorate to a state that they're still, to this day, scrambling to try to repair. That offensive line almost ruined the Joe Burrow era before it ever even truly began in his rookie season. Luckily, that dude came back with a vengeance and then took the Bengals to an actual fucking Super Bowl in 2022. Unfortunately, the offensive line issues haunted them again in the Super Bowl, but they did go back to the AFC Championship the following year and were really close to going back to another Super Bowl. At this point, Mike is close to equaling the success that his father Paul had in Cincinnati, and it all started with him moving on from Marvin Lewis, getting the right coach in Zach Taylor to lead the team into a new direction, and pairing him with the absolute game changer that is Joe Burrow. And I'm not saying it's all Joe Burrow, there's a lot of great players on the team, but that right there is a hell of a way to finally make up for all the dumb stuff you've done over the years. But like I always say, let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and I'll feature the best ones in my next video, like this one from Rich G, who said on episode 4 of the series, if getting out of your own way is something to give someone credit for, I suppose Mike should get it. I am not a Mike Brown fan, but one thing I will give him credit for is taking the Rooney Rule seriously and hiring and sticking with an African American coach. I know the final years of Lewis's tenure were frustrating to many, but he is one of the winningest and longest tenured black coaches in NFL history. He could never quite get the team over the hump, but we did get to see some great football under Lewis's tenure. So right, Rich, I get it. I'm not trying to call Mike Brown a Hall of Famer or anything. I just think he deserves some redemption, not to the point that we forget what happened, by any means. Just like, now we can be kind of cool with the fact that he's running the team and not constantly begging for him to be ousted, like we all did, Like, to the point where I think we can just be cool with the fact that he's in charge, And I agree about Marvin Lewis, by the way. I think he needs to go in the Ring of Honor, as soon as possible. I do think that he overstayed his usefulness a little bit, but the things that he did for this franchise are incredible by themselves, and also considering what he was working with, if the rest of this series is any indication, I think he should really deserve a ton of commendation for what he was able to accomplish. But until then, y'all can always catch more of what I do at Kyle Phelps92 on Twitter, Facebook.com/ThePhelps, Butt Fumble Sports, Battle of Ohio Podcast on the Spot Pod Network, and right here, if you subscribe. I really do want to see the Bengals win one for Mike here soon, guys. So I'll leave y'all, as always, with a hootie!